The smell of roasted chicken hit me first. Then, the sound of laughter from behind the kitchen door. But the deadbolt. That was new. I pressed my forehead to the frosted glass. 5 days into this punishment. Stomach screaming. Legs shaking. No dinner for liars, my mother called cheerfully. And my father. He just folded his napkin and said, "This is good for you." Like he truly believed hunger could teach a girl how to behave. But what they didn't know was that their little lesson? It would end with handcuffs. My name is Sable Marin. I'm 15 years old. I live in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Or I used to. People think abuse looks like bruises, screaming matches, broken glass. But in my house, it looked like locked doors, empty plates, and silence so sharp it could slice skin. I wasn't the rebellious one, wasn't failing school, wasn't partying or sneaking out. I was the responsible daughter, the one who said thank you, who did the chores, who remembered her sister's dentist appointments when mom forgot. And maybe that's what made it worse. Because when I finally asked, "Why does Mary get new shoes and I don't?" That's when the Hunger Games began. Before we dive deeper, if you've ever doubted your gut instinct, if you've ever been told to stop being dramatic when something felt wrong, this story is for you. Don't forget to comment, and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Now, let's go back to where this all began. 6 months before the lock clicked. 6 months before the smell of garlic made me want to cry. It started with something small, a missing dessert, and a new rule that shifted every time I tried to follow it. 6 months before the deadbolt. Dinner looked almost normal. I'd sit across from my little sister, Mary, who was 13 at the time. We'd pass bowls of steamed broccoli and overcooked rice. Listen to Dad talk about traffic. And Mom list off things she sacrificed for us that week. There was always something, but back then, if I said please and thank you, and didn't roll my eyes at Mom's stories, I got dessert. That was the rule, or so I thought. The first time I lost it, it was over something small. I had forgotten to rinse my lunch container. And instead of a slice of pie, Mom just said, "Actions have consequences." I didn't think much of it. I figured it was just her being tired. But it kept happening. One day I forgot to feed the cat. No seconds. Another time, I asked if I could swap chores with Mary because of a group project. No breakfast. I told myself it was temporary, that if I behaved better, it would stop. But the rules kept shifting, like sand under my feet. At school, I still looked okay. My grades were solid. I was in biology honors. Did peer tutoring during lunch. Nobody saw anything strange. Not even Mary. She had different rules. She always had full lunches, new clothes, even a phone upgrade when mine still had a cracked screen and a home button that stuck. I noticed the difference. Of course I did. So, one night, I finally asked. Just a quiet question while helping clear the table. "Hey, how come Mary got new shoes for school and I didn't?" Mom froze for half a second, then smiled too wide. "That's not your concern." Dad folded his arms. "Don't start with that tone." "What tone?" I said, confused. That one. Mom cut in. Ungrateful. Entitled. I didn't eat that night. And that was the real turning point. After that, food became something I had to earn, and no amount of apologies, chores, or straight A's made a difference. I tried to fix it at first. I offered to clean the garage, take Mary's laundry, babysit the neighbor's twins. Nothing worked. The more I tried, the more they pulled back. Soon, I wasn't being punished for forgetting chores. I was being punished for asking questions, or for saying nothing at all. The kitchen, once open to everyone, Started having limits at first. Just a child-proof knob on the pantry. Then a sign on the fridge. Ask before taking anything. Eventually, I didn't ask anymore. I stopped arguing. Stopped reacting. Stopped expecting. I became background noise in my own house. My dad never questioned anything. If Mom said I was testing boundaries, he nodded. If she said I was acting dramatic, he shrugged. He called it discipline. A little hunger builds character, he'd say. Like this was some lesson. Like I was a broken thing that needed molding. I started hiding granola bars under my mattress, just in case. I'd sneak a piece into my hoodie pocket before school. Sometimes even steal from a friend's lunch when no one was looking. Not because I was proud, but because hunger doesn't make you noble. It just makes you desperate. I didn't think I was being abused. That word felt too big, too loud. I thought I was just being punished. That maybe, deep down, I deserved it. I had no idea how wrong I was. It wasn't a breakdown. It was just a slip, one honest answer to the wrong question. And once the school noticed, everything spiraled. It started with a slip. I hadn't planned to say anything. Honestly, I hadn't planned anything at all. I was just tired, dizzy, hungry, barely staying upright during second period biology. When Mrs. Darnell handed back my worksheet and saw it was blank, she asked gently, "Sable, why didn't you finish this?" I blinked at the paper, then at her. "I've been dizzy," I said without thinking. "It's been hard to focus." I didn't mean for it to sound like a cry for help. I wasn't trying to expose anyone or start some investigation. It was just the truth. Her expression changed. Not dramatic, but something in her eyes shifted, narrowed. Like she'd noticed something I hadn't meant to reveal. Then came the follow-up question. Simple. Quiet. "Did you eat breakfast today?" I hesitated. Just long enough. "Not really," I said. "Not in a couple days." She didn't press further, but I could feel it. The air in the classroom tightened. Something invisible had cracked. By lunch, the school counselor had pulled me from class. She was kind, quiet, and didn't push. Just asked if everything at home was okay. If I'd been eating regularly, I answered vaguely. Said I was just stressed. That my mom was a little strict about food. She nodded like she understood. But by the time I got home that afternoon, something had clearly been said. Because Mom was waiting. She didn't yell. I almost wished she had. Instead, she smiled that tight. Deliberate smile she saved for guests or phone calls she wanted someone else to overhear. "We feed our daughter perfectly well," she said loudly, like someone might be listening. Turning to me, her voice dropped to a chilling whisper. "You want attention so badly you'll lie to strangers." I didn't lie, I said, my voice small. I just said I was dizzy. She stepped forward. "You told them we don't feed you." I didn't say that. "Stop talking." And I did. The next morning, the kitchen door was locked. Not just with the plastic childproof cover she sometimes used for Mary, but a full metal bolt, the kind you'd use for security. I wasn't even offered water. I heard Mary chewing pancakes on the other side of the door while I filled a glass at the bathroom sink. Later that day, I walked past the hallway and overheard Mom on the phone, probably with the school again. Her tone was measured. "She's going through a phase. She lies for sympathy. We're handling it with appropriate discipline." Discipline. That word sank into my stomach like a stone. A weapon. Clean and polite. Dressed up as concern. She made it sound like structure. Like parenting. But what it really meant was control. I stayed in my room that night, trying to study for a biology test I couldn't focus on. Hunger made everything blur. The letters on the page swam. My head felt foggy, like static. I sat on the stairs, just out of view from the kitchen, close enough to hear the sound of silverware clinking on plates. The smell of garlic, roasted vegetables, something buttery and warm wafted through the air. "Is Sable eating with us?" Mary asked. "No," Dad said flatly. "Since she can't appreciate family meals, she doesn't get to participate. She'll eat when she learns respect," he added, like hunger was a character lesson. I pressed my hand against the floor to steady myself. My head was spinning, but I didn't cry. I just waited until the smell faded before I went back upstairs. That night, I ate half a stolen granola bar in the bathroom. It was from Hila's lunch. She hadn't noticed me slipping it from her bag a few days ago. I told myself I'd replace it, but even I didn't believe that anymore. The next day at school, Isla offered me half her sandwich. "You're not eating again?" she asked. "Not hungry." Again. The words came easy now. Too easy. When I got home, the house was silent. I went straight to my room, reached under my mattress, and froze. The wrapper was there, but the granola bar was gone. I didn't have time to react before Mom knocked once and opened the door. No pause. No waiting. She held up the empty wrapper like it was evidence in a trial. "Hoarding food," she said. "That's a red flag. You're building disordered patterns." I stared at her, throat burning. She nodded, calm and cruel. "We're doing this for your own good." I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask how someone could create the very thing they claimed to prevent. But I stayed quiet. That night, the pantry was locked. Even the fruit bowl was gone. The next morning, I tried tightening my skirt with a hair tie, but it still slipped over my hips. I layered a cardigan over my uniform. Not for warmth, for coverage. My face in the mirror looked unfamiliar. Hollow cheeks, shadows under my eyes, wrists like wires. I felt like I was disappearing. At school, I skipped gym by claiming cramps. I did have cramps, just not the kind anyone could fix with a heating pad. I moved slowly through the halls, conserving energy. When Isla offered me half her banana, I smiled. "I'm good." She didn't believe me, but she didn't push. By sixth period, I could barely sit up. Rodriguez was lecturing about survival mechanisms, how the human body adapts under extreme conditions. He wrote the word starvation response on the whiteboard and kept talking. "First, the body burns fat," he explained. "Then muscle. In the most severe cases, even organ tissue begins to break down." I couldn't hear the rest. The buzzing in my ears drowned him out. My vision pulsed. I blinked hard. My pen slipped from my hand. Then the world tilted. I felt my body slump. Chairs scraped. Voices blurred. The floor came up to meet me. And then black. I woke to the sound of beeping machines. The nurse asked when I last ate. I couldn't remember. But I do remember this. For the first time, someone believed me. The lights were too bright. The sheets too white. And the silence, somehow louder than home. I woke in the school nurse's office, face numb from the fall, a cold compress resting against my cheek. "Sable," she said gently, her voice cutting through the ringing in my ears. "Can you hear me?" I nodded. "Barely." She wrapped a blood pressure cuff around my arm. I winced. "Let's get you sitting up slowly," she said, helping me with one arm behind my back. "When's the last time you ate?" she asked. I blinked. 2 days ago. 3. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Just air. Just shame. She didn't wait. She pointed toward the scale in the corner. "Let's see where we're at." I stood, unsteady. The number flashed once. 84. It flashed again. 84 pounds. Her lips tightened. "Not surprised." More like Confirmed. Have you lost weight recently? She asked. I shrugged. I think so. She checked the chart from last week. You were 89 pounds on Tuesday. I gripped the cot. That was just 7 days ago. You're not fine. Sable, she said, already reaching for the phone. You're down 5 pounds in a week. That's not a skipped breakfast. That's a medical crisis. Please don't call anyone, I whispered. Why not? My parents. I hesitated. They'll be mad. They'll think I'm overreacting. Her voice softened. Her hands didn't stop moving. I know you're scared, but you need help. This is serious. I don't have an eating disorder. I blurted out. I'm not starving myself. I'm not doing this on purpose. I didn't say you were, she said calmly. Then she looked straight into my eyes. Sable, who's withholding your food? I opened my mouth to lie. To spin something simple like stress. Or forgetfulness. But the words didn't come. I couldn't make my throat cooperate. She picked up the phone and dialed anyway. While she spoke to the dispatcher, I sat frozen. I heard the words pass through the air like pieces of a puzzle I hadn't realized I was in. Severe weight loss. Unresponsive in class. Risk of malnutrition. I was being reported. When she hung up, she knelt down beside me. An ambulance is on its way. She said, You're safe now. Okay. Safe? The word felt foreign. Suspicious. Even. But when the paramedics arrived, I didn't resist. They strapped me to a stretcher, wheeled me down the hallway. I saw faces in the windows of classrooms, some familiar, most not. Some looked shocked. Others looked curious. But it didn't matter. My secret wasn't mine anymore. At the hospital, I was met by a pediatric ER team and a doctor named Dr. Kumar. Her tone was warm, but professional, like she knew how to make fragile things not fall apart. She didn't start with accusations. No pressure. Just quiet questions. Was I in pain? Did I feel sick? Could I hold water? I answered in short phrases. Nia nods. It felt like she was testing the edges of a cracked glass. After the basics, she pulled a chair close and said, Sable, I'm going to ask something hard. You don't have to answer, but if you do, I'll believe you. That stopped me. No one had said that before. I'll believe you, she continued, softly. Are you choosing not to eat? Or is someone preventing you from accessing food? My throat tightened. I looked away, pretending to study the blinking light on the monitor. I'm not anorexic, I mumbled. I didn't say you were, she replied. I stayed quiet. Then, finally, I whispered, They locked the kitchen. She didn't flinch. Your parents. I nodded. And how long has this been going on? A few months, I said. It started with little things. No dessert. Then no seconds. No meals. She asked if they ever explained why. They said I needed to learn gratitude. I whispered that I was spoiled. That hunger builds character. Her jaw tensed for just a second. Then she placed a steady hand on my arm. Thank you for telling me. After she left, the medical team moved with quiet urgency. More tests, blood work, heart monitoring, IV fluids. A nutritionist came in later that afternoon, clipboard in hand. She was serious, but kind. She didn't ask what happened, just explained what she'd found. Sable, she said, I want to be very clear. This isn't anorexia. This isn't self-restriction. She showed me numbers I couldn't process. Severe vitamin deficiencies. Electrolyte imbalance. Muscle loss. My heart rhythm. Unstable. My liver. Stressed. If this had continued just a few more weeks, she said, you could have had permanent damage. Maybe worse. Then she said something that finally shattered me. We typically see this kind of malnutrition in famine victims, or prisoners of war. Not in teenagers living in a 2-story house in suburban Iowa. Not in someone like me. She closed the folder and added, "We're filing a mandatory report. The authorities have been contacted." At first, I panicked. I wanted to take it all back. To say it wasn't that serious. To lie. But then I remembered Mary's face at breakfast. How she avoided eye contact. How she chewed quietly like she didn't want me to hear. How she'd started whispering to herself at night. And suddenly, I didn't want to protect our family name anymore. I wanted to protect her. That evening, the door creaked open. A nurse stepped in, followed by a girl in a hoodie. It was Mary. She stood frozen at the foot of my bed, hands clenched inside her sleeves. "They said I could visit," she said quietly. I nodded. "Okay." She didn't speak for a long time, just looked at the IV, at my thin wrists, my sunken face. Then finally, she whispered. I didn't know it was this bad. I didn't respond. Then she looked at the nurse, then back at me. "Are you in trouble?"
"No,"
I said. "Not anymore." Her eyes filled with tears. She took a step closer and said, even softer, "Sometimes, Mom makes me eat in front of you." I nodded. "I know." "She says it's to teach you something." Her voice broke. "I hear you crying at night." I couldn't speak. From her pocket, she pulled out a granola bar and placed it gently on the bedside table, like it was gold. The nurse glanced toward the door, then back at us. A social worker stepped in and began asking Mary questions. And just like that, the secret wasn't mine anymore. It wasn't just my story. It was ours. The next time the door opened, it wasn't Mary. It was my parents. And they brought a lawyer. But what they didn't bring was the truth. They arrived just before sunset. I heard their voices in the hallway before I saw their faces. Mom's voice, sharp and rehearsed, echoed off the hospital walls. "This is absurd," she snapped at someone. "Our daughter has a history of manipulation. She's always been dramatic. We've done everything for her." I lay still, pulse thudding behind my ears. A moment later, they entered. Dad avoided eye contact. He stood stiff beside a man in a gray suit, their lawyer. Mom, though, looked directly at me. Her face was carefully arranged, calm and performative, but there was something behind her eyes. Panic, maybe, or fear pretending to be control. "You look awful," she said, almost gently, then added, "See, this is what she does. She makes herself sick for attention." No one in the room moved. No one agreed. Dr. Kumar stood near my bedside, arms crossed. The social worker stood closer now, guarded. "Ready?" Then the officer stepped in. He wasn't loud. No dramatic entrance. Just a clipboard and calm authority. He glanced at me once, then turned to my parents. "We've reviewed the evidence," he said flatly. "Your daughter's medical records show severe malnutrition. There are documented signs of intentional food deprivation. A food restriction chart was recovered from the home. And your other child confirmed the kitchen was routinely locked." Mom turned toward the lawyer, sputtering. "She's twisting everything." Dad finally looked at me. "Just once." His jaw clenched. "You don't know what you're doing," he muttered. But Dr. Kumar cut in, voice like steel. "I know exactly what we're doing." The officer didn't hesitate. "And Mrs. Marin, you are under arrest for child endangerment, neglect, and abuse." They read the rights one by one, and for the first time, my parents had no words. The cuffs clicked. My mother flinched. We gave her everything. She insisted, her voice rising. We were trying to fix her. The officer didn't even blink. You nearly killed her. And just like that, they were led out of the room. No hugs. No last glances. Just silence. But this time, it wasn't mine to carry. I spent 2 more days in the hospital. Nurses came and went. The social workers stayed close. They explained how things would work now, where I'd go, who I'd stay with, what court processes might follow. When they said I'd be going to stay with my Aunt Karen, I didn't protest. I barely remembered her. She lived 1 town over in Coralville, visited maybe once a year. But apparently, she'd already cleared a room and stocked the pantry. She said she wants you and Mary to feel safe. The caseworker told me. Safe. There was that word again. A week later, I stepped into my aunt's kitchen for the first time. No locked cabinets. No hidden keys. No counting snacks or labeling leftovers. Just open shelves and a bowl of bananas on the counter. She didn't hover. Didn't ask if I wanted to talk. She just handed me a sandwich and said, "Eat as much or as little as you want. No one here keeps score." I cried quietly after that. Not because of sadness, but because I hadn't realized how tense I'd been just trying to exist. Mary arrived 2 days after me. She clung to her backpack like it was the only solid thing she owned. We didn't say much at first. Just ate dinner side by side. Pasta, garlic bread, applesauce. Simple. Warm. I noticed her watching me as I poured seconds. I waited for a comment, a scold, a reminder. But all she said was, "There's more cheese if you want it." And just like that, something in my chest loosened. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't screaming or smashing plates or public exposure. It was this quiet return to dignity, to full meals, to full sleep, to laughter that didn't come with conditions. The system had done something right. For once. And that still surprises me. A month after the arrest, our lawyer contacted us about the hearing. We wouldn't have to testify in court, not yet. The evidence was too clear. The medical records, the counselor's report, the police statement, and Mary's taped interview, they won't be getting custody back. Our lawyer said, not anytime soon. Possibly not ever. Mary looked at me across the table. I don't want to go back. Neither do I said. And just like that, we didn't have to. But justice isn't the end of a story. It's just a different kind of beginning. And healing doesn't follow rules. Sometimes, it forgets to knock. They say once you're safe, the healing begins. But no one tells you how quiet it is. Or how loud the quiet can feel. Aunt Karen's house wasn't big, but it felt endless compared to the locked hallways I'd come from. The pantry had no door. The fridge stayed open. And yet, for weeks, I still asked before taking anything. I flinched when the microwave beeped. Apologized when I dropped a fork. Folded napkins too perfectly. Just in case someone was watching. No one was. But that didn't matter to my nervous system. Mary adjusted faster. She laughed more now. She asked questions during dinner. She sang along to the radio while helping with dishes. Sometimes, she'd get quiet and sit beside me, saying nothing, just offering presents. Other times, she brought little offerings. Half a grilled cheese, a peeled orange, a granola bar tucked into my hoodie pocket without a word. Not because I needed them anymore, but because she remembered what it felt like to. One night while slicing apples for a snack, she looked up and said, "Remember when Mom said hunger builds character?" I nodded. She said it all the time. Mary smirked. She was wrong. I looked at her. Surviving her built character, she said. The hunger just built trauma. We didn't laugh, but we smiled. That moment felt like a punctuation mark, like something that had been open too long, finally closing. Therapy started 2 weeks later. I didn't want to go, but Aunt Karen didn't make it optional. She didn't force it either. She just drove me there and said, "You don't have to talk, but you do have to show up." So I did. And for the first few sessions, I said nothing. The therapist, Dr. Levin, didn't push. She just sat with me in the silence until it started to feel less threatening. Eventually, I spoke. Not all at once. First it was just facts. Then fragments. Then feelings I didn't know had names. Like the guilt of eating while Mary sat across from me, too afraid to chew. Or the shame of stealing food from a friend's backpack. Or the twisted panic that came every time someone said I was brave. I hadn't felt brave. I'd felt terrified. Dr. Levin called it survival mode. She said my brain had been trying to protect me in the only ways it knew how. And the more she said it, like it was normal. Like it was understandable. The less broken I felt. Some days were easier than others. There were mornings I woke up hungry and smiled because I was allowed to eat. And nights I cried for no reason other than a door creaked the wrong way, or someone raised their voice on TV. Aunt Karen never asked what's wrong. She just said, "Take your time." Sometimes, she sat beside me and peeled potatoes, saying nothing. That helped more than she'll ever know. At school, things were different. Toot. Some kids whispered. Some stared. Some avoided me like I was fragile glass. But others left granola bars in my locker, sat next to me at lunch, asked how I was doing, and waited for a real answer. I didn't tell them everything. I wasn't ready, but I stopped pretending I was fine. And that, in itself, felt like a kind of power. Mary and I started cooking together on weekends. It wasn't fancy boxed mac and cheese, scrambled eggs, pancakes that burned around the edges, but it felt like building something. Not just food, but trust, ritual, control over something that used to control us. Sometimes she grated too much cheese on purpose just to watch me roll my eyes. Sometimes I pretended to be mad, and we'd both burst out laughing. We didn't talk about before all the time, but we didn't avoid it either. It became part of the air we breathed, acknowledged, but no longer suffocating. One evening, Aunt Karen came home to find the two of us sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by mixing bowls and flour-covered hands. "You girls planning to open a bakery?" she joked. Mary grinned. "Only if it comes with unlimited taste testing." Aunt Karen just smiled and joined us. No comments about mess. No critiques about waste. Just quiet participation. It felt normal. And in that moment, normal felt like the rarest kind of magic. I didn't know what would happen long term. Whether Mom and Dad would go to prison. Whether they'd try to contact us again. Whether I'd ever feel completely healed. But for the first time, I wasn't measuring life in locked doors or skipped meals. I was measuring it in small freedoms, second servings, sleeping in, laughter that didn't come with consequences. And every time I passed that open pantry door, I reminded myself, I didn't have to earn this. I didn't have to ask permission. And I wasn't afraid anymore. I used to think healing meant forgetting. Now I know, it just means you finally get to remember without flinching. And sometimes, it means sharing the story, so no one else has to wonder if theirs matters too. Healing isn't a straight line. That's what my therapist said the day I told her I still sometimes skipped breakfast, not because I had to, but because I forgot I was allowed to eat. I used to think healing meant being okay all the time. No triggers, no flashbacks. But now I understand. It just means the pain no longer owns you. Some mornings, I still check the pantry to make sure it's open. Some nights, I still dream of locked doors and cold floors. But I wake up and remind myself, that was then. This is now the girl I was quiet, obedient, desperate to earn love. She's still part of me, but she doesn't lead anymore. Now, I make my own rules. I've learned that abuse doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. It disguises itself as discipline, as structure, as love with conditions. And when you're young, when it's all you've ever known, you don't question it. You think you're the problem. You think if you could just be better, quieter, more grateful, they'd stop hurting you. But that's the lie. The truth is, no one should have to earn the right to feel safe in their own home. When I was in the hospital, I remember Dr. Kumar said something I'll never forget. This isn't about food. It's about control. And taking it back starts with telling the truth. That was the first moment I realized this wasn't just my story. It's the story of anyone who's ever been told their feelings are too much, who's been punished for speaking up, who's learned to shrink themselves to survive. It's for the kids who eat in silence while someone else controls the lock. For the ones who lie and say I'm not hungry because it's safer that way. For anyone who still thinks what happened to them wasn't bad enough to matter. It matters. You matter. I used to think my silence kept the peace. But now I know it just kept the pain hidden. And I didn't survive all of this to keep pretending. I share this story not because I want pity, or revenge, or attention. I share it because the truth deserves air. Because if one person hears this and realizes they're not alone, that maybe what's happening in their house isn't okay, then maybe that's enough to change something, even if it's just one locked door finally staying open. To this day, I still remember the sound of my mom's voice when she said, "This is for your own good. Be quiet. Be small. Be grateful I haven't broken you yet." She was wrong. I didn't break. And if you're still standing, even with trembling hands, you haven't broken either. Maybe your story's different. Maybe your wounds look nothing like mine. But if something inside you whispered while listening, "This feels familiar," then maybe it's time to stop whispering. Say something. Write something. Tell someone. Even if it's just a whisper to start. Because healing doesn't begin in silence. It begins the moment you decide to be heard. Thank you for staying with me through this. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone, or if you just needed to know that survival is strength, please like, share, or leave a comment below. You never know who might need it. And if you're struggling right now, if your house doesn't feel like home, please tell someone. You're not dramatic. You're not a burden. You're not imagining it. You're just surviving something that should have never happened. And you don't have to survive it alone.